So I will just talk, and not just talk, but I will also refer to my notes. And you can, whenever possible, interject and ask questions. Let's not look at it as a lecture format, it's a casual discussion. But there are a few things to keep in mind. Is that don't analyze what is being shared. Analyze in the sense intellectual. Because we are actually taking a trip down history of around 600-700 years. And history comes with its own concepts, ideas, perceptions, cultural presuppositions. So the time that we are discussing, and we will discuss around 300-400 years history, the time that we are discussing is far, far different than what we live now. So we need a little empathy to even try to grasp what kind of times they were. Upon that, we are discussing a very sensitive subject of empowerment of women and how it happened in the Indian context. So, just listen to it as a story. If you have any questions, you can ask. Not that I know everything, but whatever little I know about it culturally, I would like to share. The reason I do these workshops everywhere, these little talks everywhere around the world, is because of a few things. Number one, people think that the impulse of women empowerment or feminism started in the West in early 1900s or so. But I feel around the world there was always some or other woman trying to break the boundaries of patriarchy, male domination, ritualistic dogmas, hedonism, and many, many other things. But in Indian context, it started long ago. In fact, we will profile one saint who is considered to be the first official woman guru, and she was a 19-year-old girl. So we will look at these contexts, and generally my presentation, at least in India, is called Silent Revolutionaries of India. We will look at how these women went about creating social change. Did they consciously want to create social change? Were they activists? No, not really. They were not into activism, but they were doing something that comes very, very natural to each one of us. They were answering the call of their soul. And in an honest attempt to answer the call of their soul, they, through their courage and faith, broke many, many boundaries, many, many limitations, and rose to their spiritual heights and became inspirations for millions of people in India and the world, even now. Even now. How even now? Because most of these women were expressive, and they wrote a lot of songs, they wrote a lot of poetries, and even today, may not be in the cities, but in the villages in India, the songs written and composed by these women are sung. My mother used to put me to sleep as a child, singing compositions of this 19-year-old saint, guru, from late 1200s that I spoke about. Even today, their influence from 500, 600, 700 years is very well founded in Indian culture and Indian social fabric. Why? Because woman or a feminine of any species is given the role of nurturing. And the masculine of any species generally is given the role of protection. Everywhere around the world, if you see, not just India, it is the woman's responsibility. These words are very strong. So, job, sorry, but English is not my first language, neither is second. It was woman's job or responsibility to pass on spirituality or ethical or moral values to the next generation. The male of the species would be out somewhere earning money or looking for stabilization, but it was the woman's natural instinct, which comes in the form of nurturing instinct, to pass on the value system to the next generation. Around the world, wherever you see, even perhaps here, I was taught to chant mantras, or I was introduced to yoga philosophy by my mother when I was 8 or 9 years old, including my sisters. My father had nothing to do with it. So, women have contributed a lot to creating the social, cultural, ethical, moral fabric of India. But because of many reasons that I don't want to get into now, because our subject matter is different, because of many reasons they have not got their due. Because of male patriarchy, because of domination of men in every field, including spirituality, for whatever reasons. But we cannot deny the fact that the women have contributed tremendously to the not just functioning but existence of yoga in each and every home and each and every person in India till date. Is this clear till here? Now when I say yoga, I have to clarify that when I say yoga, I do not mean asana. When I say yoga, I mean the whole impulse of transforming spiritually towards your essence, towards your most efficient self. This is how I look at yoga. So when I name this workshop or this talk Women Yogis of India, I mean to indicate the women who have transformed themselves by practicing yoga and achieved a very high state of spiritual evolution. Again, when I say practicing yoga, I do not only mean yoga as we know. Please understand, today our talk will be very, very subjective. When I say God, you will interpret God in your own way. When I say yoga, you will interpret yoga in your own way. So try to be here with me in the heart, not in the definitions. Because definitions are subjectivity. And subjectivity will not let us appreciate the fact that how these women transform themselves in spite of having such strong limitation culturally, socially, physically, mentally, that we would wonder, how could she not give up? And yet she did it. And in her doing, she inspired so many women, especially women. The men used to be the philosophers, but the women used to be the holders of that philosophy. The men used to go out and argue. According to Vedas, this, according to Bhagavad Gita, this. But it was the women of the home who used to actually pass on that value in their own way to the next generation. Okay? So, before we begin, we have to understand that the whole basis of yoga in India is based on a few axioms. Axioms means what? Axioms means some basic considerations on which the whole philosophical understanding is based. Okay? What are those axioms? Number one, the axiom is human is divine in its true nature. That's first. As yogis or yoga teachers also, it should be understood clearly that yoga itself, the whole philosophy and technique and lifestyle of yoga is based in these few points. Number one, human is essentially divine in nature. There is no doubt about that. I have not said human is God in nature. Because I don't generally use the term God, but I use the term divinity. Human nature in its truest sense is divine. Number two, realization of this divine nature is the true purpose of our life, according to the philosophy of yoga. Then it may be whichever philosophy. Third, cyclic nature of time. All philosophies of yoga are based in the theory of reincarnation, because that's the structure. Okay. Fourth, need of a guide or a guru to proceed on this path. Why? Because the path of realization of self is a very, very difficult, challenging, and reflective path, where you need a shrink, where you need a counselor, where you need a guide, which is generally guru. And who is the guru? A guru is somebody who has walked the path, number one. Same path as you. So if you are a bhakti yogi, you don't go to some bhakti yogi like this. Same path as you, and somebody you trust totally. These are the two essentials. That your guru is a guide, so you know that the guide has walked before you on the same path. And number two, that you trust. Yeah, otherwise it's useless. And the last, when your true nature is experienced, you become divinity. That's it. And this is why in ancient times in India, humans, men and women alike, could declare boldly that I am God, and they would be worshipped. They would, after realization, people worship them as divinity. But in other religions or in other spiritual paths, especially that stems out of Abrahamic tradition, if you declare I am God, you are killed. It has happened with Sufis like Hallaj or many other saints, mystics. Your realization is doubted. But the spiritual, cultural premise that we are looking at, people will be jealous of you. If you claim that I have reached a state of divinity, trust me, 98% of population will be jealous of you, especially in the religious system, anywhere in India or in the world for that matter. But those 2% who will believe in you will be your disciples or your students or your devotees. Okay? So all our whole consideration is based on these axioms. Now we go to the next part. Why have I not said yoginis and why have I said women yogis? This might be a little technical, but I still want to get into it.
Can I make one question, please?
Sure.
For example, but how can you know your teacher is a teacher or he's a guru? You must not be very close to see if he's, for example, very pure or these things. How can you check it?
Your faith. The test of a guru is not in the qualification of guru, but in your faith in guru. The guru may not be qualified, but your faith will be rescued. The guru may be not what he claims to be, but your faith will take you beyond the level of guru. And there are so many stories in Indian mythology and in the reality and in history where a person devotes themselves to the guru and then the guru became that student's disciple. It happened with all Buddha's teachers. Buddha had 3 teachers before he said, I don't want all this, I am going alone. Buddha went to them, approached them in sincerity, in humility as a guru and trained under them and with them. Within some time, the guru said, oh, sorry now, you have nothing more to teach you. So then, why don't you join me in the business? No, that's true. It's written there. Say, no, really. You manage the disciples, I will set up another monastery. One guru gave him this option. Other guru was jealous. He kicked him out. Like this. So it's not about the guru. See, again, our mentality is outward in. We will see, my teacher is qualified, so I will get there. No. What are you giving? And anywhere you see, there are so many incidents in Indian mythology, even in life of saints, where the guru has said, I can't help you anymore. But the disciple has left the guru. There are stories in the Hatha Yoga pantheon, Gorakhnath and Matsyendranath. Gorakhnath, the disciple, rescued the guru from sensory temptations and brought him back. So it's not that my guru has to be PhD and then I will study with him. It's about, do I really want to be like that? That your drive, your faith is the decision maker, not the guru's qualification. Again, you have to look inside. What I can give, not what guru can give. Your faith. If you read Bible, every line is saying, your faith is your rescue. Not Christ. One day, Jesus was walking, one leper woman was standing there and she says, why will even Jesus look at me? I am nobody. I am a leper. But she goes and stands in the first line when he is walking. And she says, I know he's not going to look at me, but only if I touch his coat, his cloth, maybe I will get healed. And that's what she does. She's standing in the first line, he's walking, and she just touches his cloth, and she's healed. She's complete. Jesus stops there. He looks back, and he says, my daughter, be in good cheer. Your faith has made you whole. He doesn't say, I have made you whole. Your faith. That's it. Faith is something that we need to develop, and then it doesn't matter who is there. Maybe you have so much faith in God, but God doesn't exist. But still you will reach your divinity. So it's about faith, it's not about it. Yeah. So, we continue. The reason I said, why have I not said yogini, and I personally don't also use the term, but everybody is free to use that term if they want. Because technically yogini is somebody who has already reached the height of yoga or self-realization. So it would be a little too pretentious to call yourself a yogini if you are still trying to adjust your downward dogs. But secondly, yogini as a term in Tantra is usually given to either a very, very highly evolved yogini or somebody who was not used or who was not basically yoginis in Tantra are equivalent to witches. Witch. Okay. The reason I don't use the term yogini is because historically the term yogini has a very, very huge, heavy baggage, karmic baggage on it. Because there's so much of abuse that has happened in the field of Tantra. A lot of abuse, power abuse and sexual abuse. Because Tantra uses the whole force of sexuality for evolution. And because of male domination, the men needed a woman as a yogini to engage in so-called spiritual energetic practices. And because of that, a lot of abuse has happened. A lot of abuse has happened. We don't know this. See, the thing is, we as modern yogis know a very, very microscopic view of yoga. Microscopic view. Why? Because the yoga that we know, or the history that was charted as we know it as of now, was charted by Germans who came in the late 1700s, little Portuguese and then English. Now the thing is, who could they go to for knowledge of philosophy or mythology? They could only go to the learned ones. Right? Who was the learned? The learned were only the Brahmins. Brahmins are the higher caste. So these people who came from the West to understand Indian culture and society and religion only went to those who were educated, who knew Sanskrit, who were already in this pride that they never gave them the huge 80% view of indigenous population, tribals, aboriginal culture. There is a huge chunk of yogic history we have absolutely no idea of, even today. That's why, and Hatha Yoga comes from this culture. There are hardly few scriptures that you can measure on your hands in Sanskrit. Most of the Hatha Yoga scriptures are in local languages. Why? Because Hatha Yoga was open to everybody. You could be a tribal, you could be a prostitute, you could be a criminal. It was open to you. In fact, Hatha Yoga as a lineage started as a non-conformist movement against the Brahminical order, the order of higher castes. That's why we don't know. That's why we study Yoga Sutra and we practice asanas which are apart from Hatha Yoga. And this is the whole non-complementary paradigm happening there. Right? We study Yoga Sutra, but we practice Hatha Yoga asanas. Oops, it's a little... The fact that I'm making is, the history that we know as of now was dictated by the Brahmins. It's like aliens land today and they say, oh, we see a beautiful mansion there. Let's go and ask that man about the view of the world. And that man happens to be Bill Gates. Perhaps Bill Gates is socially more aware. Maybe some billionaire, that 1%. And they go and they tell him that we want to know about the history of your humanity. What view will that billionaire give them? Will the billionaire give them the view of 40% humanity being in poverty? Will the billionaire give them a view of most of the world population still not having even one meal a day? It is exactly what it was in India. India was ruled by 700 different little kingdoms. There was no central authority. There was no monarchy. The whole of country was not under one rule. Wherever you went, you found a new culture. Wherever you went, you found a new art form. Wherever you went, you found a new mini religion and spiritual practice. There are some books still which open the whole field of indigenous knowledge. Same thing happened in Canada, in Australia. When the white man went there, what happened? All their culture was wiped out. But they themselves had such amazing culture. You know, if you go to Australia, they have, the Aborigines are so advanced. In fact, they have something called as dream world. It's like a state of samadhi. And they have their own ways of how to get there, and then they have expressive arts. The whole, if you see the Kagatu tribals in Australia and their paintings that they do on the caves and other material, it's incredible. Incredible. In fact, after the whole mescaline and LSD fever in the West, they realized that the visualizations that people had under mescaline and LSD were almost similar to the dream world pictures that they painted in Australia on the cave walls. The point that I'm making is there's so much still that we as modern yogis have not explored that lies beneath. It's a mature content. It's mature content of spirituality. And all these women that we are going to discuss today came from that corpus, where they had their own ways of developing spirituality, but the whole intelligentsia, the whole 1% at that time, the Brahmins, the patriarchy was totally against them. And that's why I like to not use the word yoginis, I'm not forcing anybody not to use. But the scriptures that I have studied and I have read, almost all scriptures repeatedly warn the yogi not to involve in these hyper sexualized practices where women were abused. There are some scriptures in which it is very openly written. And these used to happen in particular places. There were some places in South India, there were some places in West India, there were some places in North India. It was like a congregation, where all of them used to gather, and I don't know what hedonism used to happen. And a lot has happened. So at least in my head there is some baggage of calling a woman yogini, but maybe it's just my thing, I don't know. You are free to call yourself a yogini. But yes, scripturally too, there is a lot of warning. But still, even through this, women have come out and become siddhas, the masters of yoga. At that time, at that stage, they were non-gendered, means they were women, but they had reached the soul, which is genderless. And then all the women and men become their disciples in Buddhism. Okay? That's why I call it women yogis, and yogi is a very, you could say, though it is a masculine thing, it is used in both contexts. In fact, a woman yogi is not generally called yogini, it is called devi, means goddess. Devi. So if, or sadhika, or other titles. Now,